Hello, everyone. Welcome to St. Peter's Church. If you can take your seats so that we can begin this celebration of life in dance. Thank you. Again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of Francis's family, Dances Patrelle, Ballet Academy East, and all those who love him, thank you for being here. We gather today at St. Peter's Church, a place that has long held a space for music, dance, visual art, and spiritual seeking. A place where art is not decoration, but vocation. And it feels deeply fitting that we are here today. My name is Roberto Lara Aranda, and I serve as the director of dance at St. Peter's, the dance ministry of this church. I'm also a former ballet dancer, and I was one of the many people lucky enough to take Francis's class, to learn from him, and eventually to dance with his company. So I stand here not only as someone helping you guide today's service, but as someone who was shaped by Francis, like so many of you in this room today. Today's speakers don't speak instead of others. They speak on behalf of the many teachers, students, dancers, musicians, board members, collaborators, friends, and chosen family whose lives were forever changed for the better by Francis Patrelle. If you are here today, you are part of that story. Francis had an extraordinary ability to make people feel both completely professional and completely human at the same time. His classes were rigorous, musical, demanding, and yet somehow free of the toxicity that so often shadows ballet, opera, and art spaces. For many of us, his studio became a sanctuary. I first took Francis's class at a moment of transition in my own life, just after I had retired from classical ballet. What struck me immediately was not just his eye, but his generosity, his curiosity, his delight in discovery, his insistence that dance was about more than technical steps. With Francis, technique mattered, but story, character, and emotional truth matter more. That's why it makes such sense that the New York Times will later call him a champion of story ballet. He didn't want dancers who simply executed movements. He wanted dancers who felt, who listened, who told the truth with their bodies. And perhaps most importantly, Francis believed in people. He saw dancers when others didn't. He offered opportunity when it mattered most. He reminded us, sometimes gently, sometimes with impeccable timing, that what we do on stage only works if we believe deeply that we are worth watching. Today we're here not only to honor Francis, but to celebrate him, his wit, his discipline, his generosity, his contradictions, his pearls, his martinis, and his unwavering belief in the power of dance to tell a human story. It feels right that we begin with voices from Dances Patrelle, the company he founded, nurtured, and loved so fiercely. Please join me in welcoming our first group of speakers representing Dances Patrelle's leadership, artist, and board.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's been amazing to see so many people I know. When you look at the program, and it says my name, Justin Allen, it says that I'm the managing director of Dances Patrelle. This is true, but listen, Francis was not a corporate guy. I'm not a corporate guy. Francis was much more to me than that. Francis was my family. He's the godfather of my children. And so I want to introduce myself again. Francis was my best friend. I talked with Francis pretty much every day of the world. We talked about politics, we talked about literature, we talked about his fears and his hopes. He advised me about the best ways to raise Parker and Cassidy, and he knew I ignored him. He told me about his family. He told me about the time his parents gave he and his brother Joe Cole for Christmas so that when they came down, they had gold because his parents wanted to teach them a lesson about being good. His brother Joe recently told me that when Francis was small, he would go out and make mud pies. And then after he made one, he'd go in and wash his hands. You can imagine this, washing his hands, getting everything off, and then go out and make more mud pies and go back and forth, being fastidious and a mess. And I thought that was such a wonderful story of Francis. I once asked Francis, when we were talking about his works, he had this thing that he did in his ballets. And he would have the men come up behind the women, and they would embrace them from behind. If you know his work, you saw this in What Do We Do About Mother? You saw this in Fiocco e Fiamma. You saw this a million Fiocco e Fiamma. You know what I'm talking about, Heather. The men would come up, and they would grasp the women from behind across the chest. And I said to him, why do they do that? And he said, because when he was growing up, the men in his family would do that to the women. This was their way of showing love to each other and demonstrating it to others. So he did this in his ballets. He also told me about his time in school and all the times he was bullied. And some of these are going to be hard to get through, everybody. So be patient. He told me about when he graduated from high school, all the other kids booed and called him names as he crossed the stage. So after all these stories, he would say the exact same thing every time. And you ask me where the ballets come from. Always. But when we talked, in all honesty, mostly we talked about you. Whoever I'm looking at, whoever's out there, we talked about you. Francis was so deeply interested in everyone he'd gotten to know. He wasn't interested in them as dancers particularly, or God forbid, some kind of an employee. He loved dancers, but so much more than that, he loved people. Francis used to say he didn't want to see your parts coming on the stage. He didn't want to see your feet or your elbows or your hips. He wanted to see you. Because Francis knew something that people in the arts oftentimes don't. Those are people. And he knew that. That's why his rehearsals and his classes were filled with joy, not toxicity. That's why he didn't harp against people's weight or how their technique was, or he didn't try to make them be something other than what they were. He knew that they were people, and they had their dreams and their hopes. This is also what the thing we talked about with the people. Francis was delighted to tell everyone about the people he knew who had gotten a second master's degree, who had passed the bar exam, who had published a book. And that's why he was so quick to collaborate with people. He collaborated with Patrick Solori, with Leda Meredith, with Ilona Nambasan, with me. He wanted to be a part of the things that people loved. Why? Because he loved you, all of you. Certainly not your wrists or your elbows or your hips or any of that kind of business, no matter how well you used them. So the last time I spoke to Francis, he was in the hospital. He called me and he was in a kind of a fit. He'd already had surgery on his hip and he was in pain, and frankly, he was in despair. And what he said to me was this: Justin, I am terrified. I'm terrified. And I lost contact with him, and that was the last thing he ever said to me. So I immediately, of course, began cyber-stalking his family, and I got a hold of his brother Joe. And Joe and Barbara had already been worried because they didn't know where Francis was. He had just sort of disappeared from his home. And so I got a hold of Joe, and Joe went to take care of his brother. And it's so wonderful. I've gotten to know Joe a little bit over the last few weeks, because I talk to him somewhat regularly. And he told me a story that when they were kids, some local kids were being nasty to Francis, and Joe leapt from a moving car to beat the shit out of them. And finally, their father had to pull Joe off. So it goes without saying, Joe once again came to the hospital to be with his brother because he knew, like me, that Francis was once again terrified. I'm going to be honest. Fear was a huge issue for Francis. Huge. All his life, he lived in fear. I once suggested going to the restaurant across the street from Ballet Academy East. It was called Brother Jimmy's at the time. And Francis wouldn't go because that was the kind of place where the men who were there would beat him up. It's pretty rough. I can't imagine this. But I also imagine the bravery that, in spite of all that fear, every day he walked out into the world with his jacket and his tie and his pearls around his neck and his jewels on his manicured fingers. In recent years, as Francis knew he was failing, he was most terrified that everything he had built would be destroyed or taken from him. So, show of hands. Who here has danced in, seen, or had children in the Yorkville Nutcracker? Oh, my goodness. What a non-surprise, right? I knew that was going to be the case because I knew that you would come here because undoubtedly you got from the Yorkville Nutcracker what the Yorkville Nutcracker was meant to give you. If you participated in any way, shape, or form, you were seen. You were pushed and cajoled. You were encouraged. You were part of something truly iconic, where you came on stage as a person, not a collection of elbows or hips or wrists, all finely tuned, I'm sure. You came on and you said, as Francis taught us all, "Here I am worth looking at." And you had that opportunity because Francis built that for you. And you could know that even if you didn't really believe that you were worth looking at, and God knows many times many of us have not really believed it, it didn't matter because Francis believed it for you. Now, I want to bring this to a really important moment. I'm delighted to tell you that, like his brother when they were kids, we at Dances Patrelle are going to fight for Francis. Abby Stafford is the new president of Dances Patrelle. The last weekend in March, Dances Patrelle is going to be performing. We're going to be presenting Francis's choreography. And we're even going to bring in a brand new collaborator, somebody that he'd been meeting with before his death, Magali Johnston-Viens. And we're going to call that performance, In Dance, Francis Patrelle. And in December, we're going to put on the Yorkville Nutcracker. Miriam Miller and Tyler Engel have already said they would return. We are going to beat off Francis's bullies again. Now, thank you. Now, when we move towards that, I make you a promise. Ilona and I and Becca and Christopher, we'll do all the sweat and blood sort of stuff that goes into it. We only ask from you that you give us your spirit, your friendship, your goodwill, your desire to see Francis' dream be protected from the bullies in the restaurant across the street. You are here, so I know that you believe in Francis's mission to really see and love and give support to people in dance and the DP family. And now, Jenny?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Ringer. I'm a Frances Patrelle dancer. I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm here on behalf of myself and also my husband, James Fayette, who also danced with Frances. I have a letter from James. He couldn't be here, so he's so sorry he couldn't be here, but I'm going to read the letter from him. So this is from James. Frances made me comfortable being uncomfortable. I performed several works by Frances, including numerous Yorkville nutcrackers. Each time, I would say to myself, how did I get myself into this? I was often exhausted from a heavy schedule at New York City Ballet, but I always said yes to Frances. One time I remember being in the wings with my wife. She had a red feather boa, and I was holding a prop cigarette. As our music cue was coming up, I said to Jennifer, "This was a mistake." She said, "What is?" And with my cigarette in my hand, I gestured at all of this, meaning, how did I end up backstage with a cigarette and my wife in a red feather boa? But then we went on stage to perform a parade together, and there were no regrets. We had a blast. Every day in dance, I was at Lincoln Center, and it was an amazing experience, but not always fun. With Frances, you were able to throw away your inhibitions and tell a great story and have fun artistically exploring and experimenting. But it was a transition from the safe and the comfortable to the uncomfortable, and sometimes outrageous. This is not to make light of his work. He was extremely serious about what he wanted to see on stage and the accuracy of his work. It was deeply meaningful and important, which made it so valuable to all of us through him. Frances was so radically earnest about what he felt and thought, and rarely held back in his comments or stories that often included painful personal memories. He was transparent in who he was and the way he choreographed. You always saw who he was through his works and saw the raw, wonderful world through his eyes, and he lives on in those ballets. I'm so thankful to have had him in my life, and thanks to him, I am finding myself more comfortable being uncomfortable, because life is not comfortable, and it is in the discomfort that true art and true artists are made. I became a better artist and a better person through my experiences with Frances and his ballets. Rest in peace, Frances, and know you had a profound impact on many of us who will remember you always. James Fayette. And I also just want to say from myself, because I'm certainly an example of one of the people that Frances truly saw. One of the things I loved about Frances is his love of the story and his desire to tell stories through dance. This part of Frances spoke to a deep part of myself. I also love stories, and if I were to be honest, I would say that for me, there was always a story in every ballet I ever danced, even if there was no overt storyline. For me, there's always a hidden drama that I was telling. So working with Frances resonated with that part of my artistic self that so dearly loved telling stories. But personally speaking, Frances was one of the key heroes in my own story. During a year when I was not officially dancing, after struggles with eating disorders and not having my contract renewed at New York City Ballet due to weight problems, Frances was willing to take a chance on me, even overweight and just returning to dance. And he invited me to be his Juliet opposite James when he revived his Romeo and Juliet here. Frances saw people. He saw stories. He was interested in what people were experiencing and living, and was interested in telling real human stories through ballet on stage. He saw me, not through the eyes of the ballet world, but through human, caring, artistic eyes. Frances was one of my heroes. During Romeo and Juliet, James and I fell in love, and now 25 years later, and 2 children later, I have to point to a lot of our love story being from Frances. And Frances put me on stage and allowed me to perform in New York City for the first time in years. something that led to me ultimately returning to New York City Ballet and having another 14 years of a professional career. I would not be where I am now without Francis being one of my heroes, and I know that he was a hero to so many people here in this room today. I'm deeply grateful to Francis, and I'm so appreciative of the community formed because of him and the incredible artists and people that I have met and worked with because of him. I will always remember him and be grateful for the experiences I got to have with Francis, telling stories through dance and expressing life and love and heartache and joy with all the incredible people he surrounded himself with. Gratitude and love to you, Francis, always. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Joni Petrie-Scholes, which are both terrible last names. I first met Francis in 1980. He was the glamorous New Yorker, resident choreographer, and Drosselmeyer at the Berkshire Ballet, and I, a 12-year-old, participating in the Nutcracker. My memory of his arrival is very clear. People perked up. They danced better to try to catch his eye. He mattered. At 13, it was immensely exciting to be included in the creation of his original Romeo and Juliet. Learning the detail of how to tell a story, to make each gesture and personal connection translate to the audience, helped me build the skills I would always use. Watching the professionals evolve under his guidance resonated and was life-changing and inspiring to me. Always a small private word from Francis would have big impact. He had the ability to settle nerves with a few kind words, demand to know why the hell you weren't more joyful in the mandolin dance in the third act, or tell you that the outfit you were wearing was not exactly flattering. At 18, I reconnected with Francis at Manhattan Ballet in New York City when we were to perform Rhapsody in Blue on an international tour. What a small world. I became his class demonstrator at Ballet Academy East, and what I learned from those years truly shaped me as a teacher. Humor, reverence to the art form, the importance of developing and expressing your own opinions and your own sense of artistry, and connecting with every human in the room, perhaps using a little less sarcasm. These were the hallmarks of the Gospel of St. Francis. Francis, who knew me as a kid, recognized me as an adult, and taught me to create a space where every individual contributes to the process. Francis created far more than ballets. He created opportunity. He planted the seeds of the importance of giving back to ballet and stressed the imperative of teaching the next generation. As I step into the studio every day to work with students, whether teaching or choreographing, these ideals are never far from mind. The joy in dancing together, in being seen as adults, not as small children, who are very important. Francis's lessons can now resonate to the next generation through all of us. What an amazing legacy he leaves.
I'm Carmen Tagle. We're in black and blue, and no Bartok but pearls, Francis. And yes, life is not an adagio, so I'm going to speak fast in 90 seconds. In the old days, when we were younger, and we would go traveling, all of us, and before the advent of iPhones, we would take slides. Remember slides? And then we would come home and bore our family and friends with them. As I thought about how to tell you in 90 seconds about my journey with Francis, I am using a few imaginary slides, so bear with me. Slide number 1 is me in 1980, looking up at the steep stairs at Ballet Academy East on 79th Street and thinking, I always wanted to learn ballet. Up the stairs I went, I met Francis Patrelle, and life was never the same. A typical Saturday morning for Francis consisted of teaching 4 open classes back to back at Ballet Academy East, followed by a grilled cheese and tomato sandwich at the corner diner, and then jumping on the Bonanza bus to the Berkshires, where, as Joni pointed out, he spent half the week. He was teacher, dancer, and choreographer. And yes, dancer. Slide. I last saw Francis on the stage in the principal role of Petrushka at Berkshire Ballet, something definitely to be remembered. The 80s were a very exciting and active time in Francis's life. Romeo and Juliet, the original Romeo and Juliet, dates from that time, and so does his association with Rita B. Watson, his wonderful costume designer based in Williamstown, with whom he had a lifetime relationship. While he was working 7 days a week, the seeds were taking ground for dances ... as it was usually spelled, Patrelle. And his first, Rhoda's laughing, in his first board, led by Mary Cover, former ABT dancer, Barbara Rothschild, Julia Dobno, and Jeff Kalman, came around him, forming that first board. I was asked to join one of the early boards, and the journey began. Our journey as board members ranged from the sublime to the less sublime. Slide of opening night, full house, whether it be at Florence Gould Theater or at the Kay Playhouse, full. And then wondering whether 2 hours later we would be able to make payroll as the wonderful curtain came down. No slide of that. In between, as my husband Alan can witness, we had the joy of being able to attend rehearsals where we watched Romeo throw his cape down for Juliet over and over and over, because who knew? Props never behaved properly. Those were memories you have for a lifetime. And my last few slides include a few firsts and lasts. A slide of Miss Cynthia Gregory dancing the role of Clara, the last time she was on the stage, and this was at Florence Gould. That is memorable. Also, Francis, hand in hand with Stephen Sondheim, taking a bow after anyone can, surrounded by the dancers and also the opera singers from Manhattan School of Music, where he taught many years movement. And then the first commission score for Madame X for Patrick Soluri, who's here today. And that was a momentous time. And my last slide, last but not least, opening night of the Yorkville Nutcracker in December 1996. And that was a leap of faith production where took Dances Patrelle to twice the annual productions and twice the performances. And many of the original cast of the Yorkville Nutcracker are here tonight. Many grew up to be professional dancers and choreographers, and it was a very memorable time. Knowing Francis and serving on the Dances Patrelle board in those early years enriched my life beyond anything I could have imagined on that day on 79th Street, looking up at the stairs. Thank you.
This is surreal. Somehow I never thought this day would come, but here goes. My roller coaster ride with Francis Patrelle began when I was just 8 years old. My mother had convinced me to stick with after-school ballet classes at what was then the precursor to Ballet Academy East, Fauquin Ballet School. She had heard that there would be a new teacher and encouraged me to stick it out for another year. Thank you, Mom. Into my life strode young Frances Patrelle with, if you can believe it, a mane of shoulder-length dark hair and a full beard and mustache. I came home raving about the new teacher, even if, as I noted, and forgive me, I know we're in a church, he looked just like Jesus. For real. Fast forward many years of wonderful tutelage until the turning point of our relationship came. I was 25 years old, having a cup of coffee with my revered Mr. Patrelle. And the question he set before me nearly knocked me off my feet. Not an uncomfortable feeling for a dancer. Not a comfortable feeling for a dancer. Would I consider taking the position of managing director of his then 3-year-old ballet company, Dances Patrelle? The former managing director, Mary Cover, was moving to California, and he needed someone who could fill the void. Up until that point, I had only supported the company by volunteering at mass mailings, licking stamps, back when we licked stamps, and sealing envelopes on invitations to performances and fundraisers. I was not sure if I knew what I was getting myself into. What an adventure I embarked on. Frances took the risk of taking someone with a passion for dance and steering that passion into directions I never knew existed. My simple support turned into a much more complex form of sustaining the effort. Since that fateful day, I served for 2 decades on the board of directors of Dances Patrelle in various capacities, as a managing director, a board president, a board co-president, and an executive vice president. And the one thing that never veered off course was the collective interest in having the company succeed. There were times we were not always sure that that would happen, but here on this very bittersweet day, it is interesting to consider why we actually saw that hope become a reality. What did it mean to be a member of the Dances Patrelle board at that time? We were a disparate group from many wakes of life: lawyers, business people, architects, accountants, real estate brokers, judges, interior designers, to name just a few. We shared one and only one common interest. We loved, admired, and supported Frances Patrelle's choreographic work and artistic vision. That support came in many forms: financial, work-oriented, and as a cheerleader. It was a time-consuming task, and often in the economic environment fraught with risk and uncertainty. However, that one unifying bond seemed to have been the undercurrent of our company's success. Dances Patrelle is a different kind of company, as we all know and have already discussed. The theme of dramatic dance runs against the neoclassical stream feeding the artistic environment of New York City. But this lone mission allowed us to make statements on the stage that at the time no one else was executing. The repertory drew inspiration from sources as diverse as New York turn-of-the-century history, Yorkville Nutcracker, to Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, and Macbeth, to jazz, Red Ellington, to American song cycles, Come Rain, Come Shine, American Dreamer, to just plain old wonderful song cycles, pop, Sondheim's Anyone Can. And the roster of great dancers, well, that's a whole other speech. We on the board felt we all had a part in these works. Our support allowed the company to add diversity to the art scene of our city. It was an uphill battle, approving budgets, negotiating salaries, fundraising, saying no, saying yes, worrying, voting, placating, asking difficult questions, planning meetings, educating. But it was a fight that was deemed worthwhile. Besides, we got a lovely gift at the end. We got to sit in a theater with Frances on opening night, watching an evening of beautiful dance that would not have been possible without our efforts. What greater satisfaction exists? Being on the board allowed us to have an artistic voice. We didn't dance, but we made dance happen. and what a worthwhile endeavor it was. To Frances, my revered teacher and mentor, thank you for the opportunity to know you and to work with you. Your mantra during class and during our time together has sustained me to today. Grand plie. Now get up. In dance, Frances, in dance, Erica.
Well, I'm Ruth Pickholtz, and unlike the others who spoke, I have never entered a dance studio or dreamed of putting on point shoes. I didn't know the difference between a plie and a tendu. My background was far removed from the beautiful world of ballet. My world was criminal law, first as a defense attorney, then as a judge for 35 years, presiding over felony trials. I was introduced to the magic of Frances Patrelle through the eyes of my daughter, Elizabeth Portnoy. She was Frances's student, and he cast her as a reindeer in the very first production of the Yorkville Nutcracker, which will celebrate its 30th anniversary. And what began as a childhood role for her became a lifelong connection, and Elizabeth has remained involved in the Yorkville Nutcracker from its inception, and today proudly serves as a member of the board of Dances Patrelle. So watching my daughter's joy and the joy of all the children Frances nurtured pulled me in completely. And Frances didn't just teach dance. He created a family. And he welcomed me into that family so fully that before I knew it, I, who had never taken a dance class, became the co-president of the board of directors of Dances Patrelle with Erica. And somehow, Frances even managed to inspire my husband, David Portnoy, also a lawyer, who knew even less about ballet than I did, to become part of that family too. He encouraged David to assume the role of resident DJ and got him to DJ all the Dances Patrelle's galas and fundraisers. That was Frances in a nutshell, always seeing possibilities in people they didn't yet see in themselves. Because of Frances, I learned not only about ballet and the beautiful steps he created, but how his ballet told stories of humanity, love, loss, and deep-seated emotion. And most importantly, I stand here on this dais with a circle of friends who for decades now have become my chosen family. I will miss Frances deeply, especially his almost weekly phone calls, which never began with a simple hello, but always, Ruth, guilty or not guilty? What are they? In a word, Frances, I'm guilty of having the greatest respect and admiration for you. You were a creative force who changed lives, built families, and told our human stories through dance. I am forever grateful to have been part of the world you created. And Frances, you did teach me the difference between a plie and a tendu. Thank you.
Heaven just got a lot more interesting. I see Francis up there. He's looking around. He sees popes and princes and paupers, and he's wondering, how did they get here? So there's a story, and I'm going to tell it. Excuse me, St. Peter, We're gonna stage it in the Basilica, and now I don't have to pay the K. Excellent. Okay. Profikov, can't pronounce that one. Your Romeo and Juliet, it was sublime. But this is heaven, so we can do a little better. I have some direction for you. And Mr. Nureyev, Dame Margot, I would like you to meet Leda Meredith. She's gonna teach you my choreography. And for costumes, oh, look, it's Marie Antoinette's dressmaker. You are fabulous. Except whether I'm in heaven or earth, it's always gonna be Rita Watson. But here's a ticket to my ballet. Please, sit with me. And now for the gala. Oh wait, it's heaven. I don't have to raise money. Excellent. Champagne, caviar, vodka martinis for everyone. We're all invited. It's gonna be fabulous. And the whole time, he's bickering with Dick Andros about God doesn't even know. God's like you two. Go in the corner. I have a universe to run. Think about it. He hasn't even been there a month, and he's already got Dick Andros in trouble, and God's in a kerfuffle, and all because Francis needs to put on a ballet and tell a story. But that's what truly, truly drove him. Stories about our humanity, the beautiful and the ugly, the loving and the hateful, the generous and the greedy, the lustful and the chaste, the silly and the serious. It goes on and on and on and on. That human condition that made us all who we are, the mess of all of us and all our contradictions and complexity, that is what Francis explored in over 65 ballets that he produced, and even in his ballet class. And even as he got older and his body betrayed him, and he would fall down in class, and it took 7 of us to scrape him up off the floor. Without missing a minute, he'd be like, move the bars, come center. And we're all like, what? Is he serious? Come on, is he crazy? He just, hello, coffee clutches over, adagio. He wasn't crazy, he was curious about us, about people, about our humanity. And he taught us and he shared that with us through his drive and his spirit. And that continues on in heaven, in earth, all around us. And today, as we celebrate him and we love him and miss him, and we thank him for all those life-changing corrections, he would respond with a little bit of his own style of dramatic haute and silly whimsical. He would just say to us, "It's my joy."
I think you're in for a lot of quotes, Francisisms today, so I'm going to start with another one. Life is not an adagio. It's a scherzo fugue played backwards. So I'm going to start at the beginning. Does anyone have anything new and positive they would like to share? Each class Francis taught would begin with this question. Sometimes if there was a new person, he would explain this was really group, not ballet class. He wore a tie to the studio each day because, as he would say, this is my church. The discussions between combinations would run from technique to music, history, family, politics, and beyond. There were no boundaries to the forum, and there was always laughter. Francis had a deep appreciation for humor and the doors that it can open. He loved finding a way to connect with each individual student, probing us for who we all were and what fascinated us. But what has astonished me most over the years has been his generosity of spirit and his profound belief in a positive sum world. He genuinely wanted to share what he knew and receive from others, believing that this must make us all better. Teaching with him at the Manhattan School of Music was a distillation of his ballet class. For over 30 years, he taught movement for singers there, and I was fortunate enough to assist and co-teach the class with him for 4 years. Ostensibly, the class was meant to teach opera singers the basics in dance, but it became something so much broader. We taught the students how to prepare and think about the body, how to walk in heels, how to make eye contact, how to be still. And a dance was never just a dance. Each dance was taught and discussed in relation to the time and place it was danced, the social mores of the time, and of course, the clothes. He was so successful in creating a safe space for the students to try new things with their bodies and minds. It was a brilliant and maximalist interpretation of his mission, and became a class that taught how to become believable characters on stage. He adored the challenge of teaching many without a dance background, finding a way in, a place of connection, as was his specialty. This idea of connection carried over, of course, into his choreography. He loved to create, but I think always considered himself more of a collaborator. Each class was a collaboration with the pianist, whom he would call maestro or maestra. He collaborated with his dancers by encouraging us to be individuals in the roles we danced for him, but especially with the creative team he referred to as the Dance's Patrelle resident designers. This team included David Grill for lighting, Rita Watson for her inimitable costumes, and Jillian Bradshaw Smith for sets. He had a recurring collaboration with composer Patrick Soluri, who, including Madame X, one of his beloved later ballets. His ethos was that you surround yourself with people who are better than you, and he believed so deeply in their contributions to his vision. In Francis's life and in his teaching, he quoted others often, everyone from Sir Anthony Tudor to his mother. He was fond of mentioning things that he learned from different people. During his Nutcracker, he would often mention the steps that were suggested by dancers, or there as a tribute to the Ballet Russe. And if you've never had the pleasure of sitting next to Francis while he watched his own ballet, that was an experience. Non-stop commentary, I'm looking for Becca, and in a not very inside voice. Shushed by audience members regularly. But to sit next to him as he marveled at the colors during Nutcracker finale or the musicality of his snow scene is something I will miss forever. I will do my best to hear his voice in my head and can only dream of matching his generosity of spirit. The excerpt of Double Martini we're about to finally present showcases many Patrelle themes. It brought Francis so much joy watching this ballet last spring. We're thrilled to have Jerry Corman back at the piano, Perry Sussman on vocals, and our incredible dancers, who I hope are warm, are Tara Clark, Kalana Hankinson, Ethan Schweitzer-Gaslin, and Christopher Charles McDaniel. Thank you.
Down the street, who's that looking so petite? Who's that coming down to meet me here? Who's that, you know who I mean? Sweetest who you've ever seen. I could tell her miles away from here. Yes, sir, that's my baby. No, sir, don't mean maybe. Yes, sir, that's my baby now. Yes, ma'am, we've decided, no, ma'am, we won't hide it. Yes, ma'am, you're invited now. By the way, when we reach the preacher, I'll say, yes, sir, that's my baby. No,
Thank you to the dancers, musicians, and vocalists for that beautiful performance. And thank you, Francis, for reminding us yet again that joy, precision, and musicality belong in the same room. Francis often said that musicality wasn't optional, that you didn't dance to the music, you danced with the music. And if you weren't listening, well, he had ways of letting you know. Our next group of speakers represents another cornerstone of Francis's life and legacy, Ballet Academy East. For decades, this was a place where generations of dancers learned not only how to move, but how to be, with discipline, imagination, and heart. I would now like to invite the Ballet Academy East leadership and speakers to join us at the lectern.
Hello, everyone. On BAE's very first day in 1979, in September, there were just 3 of us making things happen. I was at the desk, Douglas Schultz was at the piano, and Francis Patrelle taught every class, including the pre-ballet classes. That was 46 years ago, but I first met Francis 8 years before that, when he was a young teacher and I was a 12-year-old student at the Fokine Ballet School. I can still remember what a big presence he was in the studio, how he inspired us to feel the music and reminded us why we danced. Every class was infused with Francis's wit, humor, and lightness. Most of all, his energy and passion made you want to do your best and try for more. I feel so lucky to have had Francis Patrelle as a teacher, and then, years later, when the opportunity arose, to have him as the first teacher on the very first day of BAE. As Francis's choreographic career and company grew, and as the school expanded, he remained deeply loyal and supportive of BAE. Many longtime members of the BAE faculty first came to the school because of Francis. His impact on BAE, on me, on all of us here cannot be overstated. I am so very grateful to him for that. Francis understood how important it was to encourage dancers. Whether you were a young student or a principal dancer, he believed it was his job to bring out your best, and he did that by making you feel he truly believed in you. That is why his students loved and were devoted to him, and why, along with his choreographic talent, of course, the greatest dancers of our time wanted to work with him. I have so many fond memories of Francis, as we all do, but my most cherished are of seeing him in the studios at BAE. Every class he taught was an event. Every moment in class was special. When he would say, "Maestro," and "Adagio, please," you could feel the anticipation in the room. I will never forget those memories, and in honor of Francis, I will do my best to make every day a special event.
Hi, I'm Darla Hoover, and I think that among Francis's many talents, one of my favorite was the way he would bring people together. I mean, just look at all of us here right now. He would bring dancers, musicians, singers, everyone together, and it was a family immediately. Some of my most important people in my life I met through Francis. Julia Dubno being one of them. I will forever be indebted to him for that, and for many of you sitting here. I feel that, pardon me, he really had a talent for bringing people together. And as many of the other people have pointed out, making you feel like a family. Dancers felt safe with Francis. He treated dancers, students, colleagues, just like family. And he made it fun. It was so fun dancing for him. I had the pleasure of knowing him in 3 different capacities. One as a dancer, another as a colleague, as a fellow teacher at Ballet Academy East, and also as a parent. And each one of them was filled with love and nurturing. As a dancer, the atmosphere that he created for you to work in was phenomenal. It felt free. It felt like the reason you always wanted to dance in the first place. As a colleague, it was wonderful to know that down the hall, the students were in Mr. Patrelle's studio and being nurtured as only Francis could do. And then lastly, as a mother, my son was one of his students as well. In all 3 of these capacities, he had the ability to make it feel like a family. And I'm going to share a story with you. As a dancer, he wanted me to perform in Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, and I said, I would love to, but, I have a 2-year-old. I don't really have the child care that I would need. He goes, well, then bring him. What could possibly go wrong with a 2-year-old in a studio? And it just points out the kind of person that Francis was, because I would be in the front of the studio rehearsing with Francis. He's choreographing on me. And in the mirror, I could see my son being put in a metal Tonka truck, being whirled across the studio behind me, all of the dancers having fun with Trevor. And it didn't faze Francis. In fact, I think he loved it because it brought the humanity into the room. And for that, again, I will be forever grateful. So I say what we should do is remember the joy and the whole reason he did all of this in the first place. He so badly wanted to bring beauty and joy into the world, and let us all walk away with that. Thank you, Francis.
Hi, I'm Ginger Thatcher, and I'm really honored to be able to speak today about Francis. I joined BAE in about 2001, and Francis was one of the first people that reached out to me. We became quick acquaintances and friends, maybe because we shared people we knew in American Ballet Theater and New York City Ballet. I'd worked with those companies. He'd had them beautifully perform his amazing works, which I'd seen. And I think at the time I was on Broadway with Oklahoma, and so we got into that whole thing, and he loved musical theater. So I would look forward to the times when I'd come to either sub or teach, and he'd be sitting on the bench with his incredible, immaculate outfit. And I just loved it. He was the king of bling. He would have made my grandmother, the fashion queen, envious. And I loved it. And we would sit and we'd talk and we'd gossip. He loved the gossip. But what I loved the most about it was his elfin laugh that you couldn't help but laugh with. The joy that he had in all the people that he knew. And I would go in and take his class, and he would come in and take mine. He would take the bar. And at one point in class, he said to his students, if you can't take from me, go take with her. And I was like, what? And I thought, how amazing that he would have that support for someone that he only knew for a little while, and yet he gave that to me. He supported my choreography. He had a gig at Carnegie Hall called the Lyric Recovery Festival, and he couldn't do it, and he told them they should hire me. And I was so amazed by that generosity and giving. And so I will say this, when I was in his classes, My favorite parts were when he would teach dégagés and frappés, the exuberance of it, and one, and two, and three. He had this amazing, and his beautiful waltz combinations across the floor. And every person that was in that class, whether they were professionals, whether they were people who had danced and were still taking class, or whether they were adults that were very serious about their classes, every single one was special. Every single one. The joy that he gave was amazing. And so I say to Francis now that I hope you're above the clouds in the ether, and you are teaching those dégagés and frappés and those waltz combinations, and that you are teaching everyone up there that beauty and love and compassion comes through the arts. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Wood. This is Tagadi Patrick, Regina Holohan, Rhoda Ribner, and Andrea Thau, and we are here representing the thousands of Francis's students. That was a hard act to follow, Ginger. But as we have heard and seen tonight, Francis trained and choreographed for so many beautifully gifted dancers. But an important part of his legacy was his dedication to teaching and sharing his passion with literally hundreds of adult students over many decades.
Does anyone have anything new and positive to share with this group?
This is how Francis would start each adult class, and it is a perfect example of how he brought together a dedicated group of adult students whom he viewed as family and who, in turn, viewed him and each other as family. The following remarks are a compilation of thoughts of those of us standing here, some of whom go back as far as the 79th Street studio, as well as others who share our love for dear Mr. Patrelle. Francis's classes were filled with sayings and corrections that were actually bits of advice about life.
Here I am. I'm worth looking at. The in-between steps are important.
Francis took the time to learn our names, who we were, and what we were up to in our lives. He saw all of us as artists and contributors to the ballet world and to his world. He was never patronizing and always taught class, no matter who was in it, with respect for the dancers and the art form. In doing so, he created a very special community.
Redefine your tendus every class. They are a stretch, not a point.
This is something else he would say every class. He saw in each one of us the potential to improve, and he pushed us, thoughtfully and respectfully, to be the best we could be. He emphasized those aspects of ballet that all of us could embrace, regardless of our age or physicality.
Ballet is easy when you do it exactly right. Enjoy the stretch.
These words of encouragement pushed us all forward. But ballet class with Francis Patrelle was always so much more than improving our tendus. His endless curiosity about all aspects of life, not just ballet, and his eagerness to share his knowledge with his students, whether about ballet, music, theater, politics, the Yankees, or whatever the topic of the day, made his classes unique. We listened.
Life is not an adagio.
We learned.
I'm Italian. I can't cook without garlic, and you can't dance without a pomo.
We laughed.
What color is your tutu?
We danced. Francis was always interested in our accomplishments and romantic adventures. He supported us as we married and had children, all of whom I think he viewed as his grandchildren, and many of them even danced in his nutcracker. He delighted in imparting valuable advice with his unique sense of humor.
There's only one thing that's never too big: diamonds. A good prince is hard to find.
Francis would light up when a pianist would play Gershwin, Arlen, Porter, or Rodgers and Hart. He would enthusiastically tell the pianist to
let it rip.
As we attempted a complicated petit adagio.
Where's the joy?
He would demand. Francis was all about musicality and movement. He wanted us to feel the pure joy of eating up space.
Move your tuchus.
That was a favorite refrain shouted from Studio 5 during Grand Adagio. He always taught us as though we might someday put on the pink or white tights. He insisted that we all needed a beautiful string of pearls, and occasionally he called for a tiara. He understood that even if our physicality was limited, our passion was worthy of being cultivated. What a gift. He held space for us, always. Francis, you were our maestro. We were your disciples. You inspired us to do our best for you and learn the art form and its history and hear your fantastic stories. You taught us so much that will stay with us as we all continue our journeys as adult ballet students. Can we ever start center without hearing you say,
why do we do the adagio?
For our souls. Be one with music, Francis. We miss you.
I'm Daria Rose-Foner, and I'm a proud alumna of Ballet Academy East. In the inaugural year of the Yorkville Nutcracker, Mr. Patrelle cast me as a Persian boy in the party scene. I remember, even as I longed to be a Dutch girl, how special I felt getting to be carried on stage. But that was Mr. Patrelle. He saw us each and ensured that we knew we were seen. Years later, when I danced Dewdrop, I remember how proud he was that those of us in that first cast were now performing principal roles. While I recall so many small details, his ever-present chapstick, love of farm cake muffins, or frequent evocation of Yehudi, what remains inseparable for me is his profound belief in musicality. That we were never performing steps in a vacuum, but always in response to the music. That the same step or gesture could mean a dozen different things depending on the cadence, the spirit, and the mood of the musical accompaniment. Mr. Patrelle also believed deeply in the beauty of épaulement, how something as simple as the turn of the shoulders could convey so many subtleties of expression. He was profoundly loyal to his dancers, his students, his colleagues, and his community at large. He was, in every sense, generous of heart. And part of that was how he instilled confidence in all of us. The phrase he repeated, one that I can still hear him saying while demonstrating port de bras, "I'm here, and I'm worth looking at." It's something I still tell myself when I'm nervous or in need of courage. It expressed his belief that discipline and joy can coexist, and that one can possess both humility and conviction at the same time. Teaching, at its best, is a form of generosity, and Mr. Patrelle's generosity lives on, carried forward in the countless dancers whose lives he has touched. It is now my privilege to introduce three fellow Ballet Academy East alumni, Hannah Marshall and Finn Duggan, who will dance an excerpt from Glazunov Pas de Deux, choreographed by Ariel Rose.
Before we continue, I want to acknowledge someone who shared an extraordinary musical partnership with Frances over many decades. Pianist Michael Cherry accompanied Frances's classes at Ballet Academies for years, helping shape not only the rhythm of the room, but its soul. Anyone who took class knows this was not background music. This was collaboration, conversation, sometimes gentle argument, always in service of dance. Michael will now offer a short piece in honor of Frances on behalf of all the wonderful musicians who worked with him over the years. As we come toward the close of our time together, I want to say this. Francis did not just leave us choreography, he left us courage. He left us confidence. He left us permission to be fully ourselves, to take up space, to tell stories honestly, and to dance like it mattered, because it did. Many of us will continue to hear his voice in class, leaning on the bar, asking about our mothers, reminded us that adagio is good for the soul, or telling us very clearly when we were overthinking everything. And many of us will continue to carry one of his simplest and most profound teachings, here I am, and I am worth looking at. Francis believed that with his whole heart. And because he believed it, so many of us learned to believe it too. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for honoring him. And now, in true Francis fashion, before this gets too serious, I invite you to join us in the living room for a reception, a chance to share stories, laughter, memories, and perhaps to raise a glass in love, in family, and always, always in dance.